Hey all, welcome back to the Lowland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. Got another plant spotlight that I'm doing for you guys today, and this time we are going back to the butterworts, Pinguicula, and in particular, one of the groups of plants that's a little less common in cultivation, not the Southeast U.S. species, not the Mexican plants that are very commonly grown, but instead a northern temperate plant, and this time actually not a species, but a hybrid, and one that has kind of given a bit of headache for me recently. Today we are visiting what is known as Pinguicula scullyi. This is a hybrid between Pinguicula grandiflora and vulgaris. And that results in a very intermediate looking plant between these two species. The two species are possibly even less common in cultivation than this because this plant I've actually received twice in the past year, both labeled one as vulgaris, the other as grandiflora, and it turned out in both cases they were actually the hybrid. So there seems to be quite a bit of mislabeling going on. The hybrid seems to be particularly vigorous compared to both of its parent species, possibly a case of heterosis, hybrid vigor, who knows? May have to test that theory out later. But this hybrid is found wherever its two parent species are found in the wild. Grandiflora is more restricted in its range than vulgaris. Vulgaris is a circumboreal species. It's found all around the northern hemisphere in very temperate boreal areas. Grandiflora is found in Ireland and parts of southern mainland Europe. And wherever grandiflora, the standard grandiflora, and the standard subspecies vulgaris overlap, such as Ireland and parts of Italy, possibly Spain, Austria, and such, you may find the hybrid growing alongside them. Now, this plant grows to, once they're fully mature, an average of around 4 to 6 inches in diameter. They produce these big rosettes of broad, flat leaves that are covered in very tiny tentacles on the surface. And if you were to touch that, of course, you would get a very sticky sensation on your fingers. Hence the genus name Pinguicula, little greasy one. And once they've started growing in the spring, oftentimes the first leaves will come out and then almost immediately followed by 1 to several stalks producing these gorgeous flowers. Again, this hybrid is kind of intermediate between its two parent species. Vulgaris has somewhat smaller and very deep purple, plainly patterned flowers. Grandiflora has very large, kind of wavy, veined blooms. These guys have flowers that are, they've got lobes, the petals that kind of expand away from each other. They don't overlap. There is some veining on the corolla as well and down into the corolla tube. Kind of a median coloration, maybe purplish, maybe kind of greenish in the long spur at the back. But in all these cases, these are flowers that are designed to attract the local moths or bees to pollinate them. The bees come in, they line up with those veins and such that kind of act as a landing pad for these guys that kind of directs them where to go. They'll crawl inside the corolla tube, and as they do so, the plant hopes that it has visited another flower previously and is covered, and they're covered in pollen, and so they'll rub across the stigma that is on the upper inside of the flower. Now, as they go back, they find the nectar in that nectar spur. They drink that up, and then as they back up, they fold up that stigma, and up underneath there are the two stamens of the flower, and as they rub across that, they gain that pollen and then fly off to the next flower to hopefully pollinate. Now, these guys, of course, grow during the summer in these temperate areas, and then during winter, they are covered in ice and snow and have to survive that. So they die back from these large, beautiful rosettes to these very small, very compact clusters of scale-like leaves, and those are called hibernacula. The hibernacula are kind of recessed into the soil slightly to help protect the plant, keep it from frost damage and such. And one of the ways these species also propagate, not only getting pollinated with the flowers, the seeds are then produced and then scattered around, but also when they produce those hibernacula, they will also produce tiny bud hibernacula around the base of that structure, and those are called gemmae. Same name is used for the modified leaves found in pygmy sundews that they use that for propagation. Those gemmae readily detach from the parent plant and can be washed around by rain and maybe pushed by wind and so on, and so that will scatter those, and they'll start growing new clonal variations of these plants. So in case the seeds don't take, they can clone themselves instead and maintain a colony as well. And as you can see in this pot here, there are all sorts of little plants that are just starting to reach a more mature size. Those are the gemmae from this past season that were planted out and are now growing as well. So because of their temperate habits, the sometimes high, cool elevations that they live at, these are a little bit more difficult to grow than your tropical Mexican butterworts or even the warm temperate southeast U.S. species, because they don't like it hot and they do require a hard dormancy in winter in order to survive. If you don't give them that, those hibernacula rot or the plants start growing out very weakly and eventually die, so they need that winter rest. So if you want to grow these species, you kind of have to mimic their natural conditions. This plant, just like both of its parents, lives either in kind of wet seepages in the wild or in peat and sphagnum bogs. So it will grow in your standard carnivorous plant soil, kind of a one-to-one, like peat and perlite soil. I have something similar in here for these guys right now, and they'll do just fine in that. Because they are a very much kind of swamp, seepage, bog plant, they do like it fairly moist, although best not to like flood them or anything, just keep it damp to slightly wet in the soil when they're actively growing, and maybe slightly drier during winter so they don't risk rot. When they are actively growing, you want to keep the temperatures for them between about 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go towards 80, 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that can start stressing the plants out, and you can either see them collapse or they may go dormant early. They'll actually form hibernacula very quickly in hot conditions, and then those will just kind of last until whenever winter comes and the plants go truly dormant at that point. So keep them moderately cool. They like fairly bright light, although they will tolerate a little lower light than, say, your average sundew does, and they'll do just fine in a slightly lower light conditions. And then come winter, of course, when those hibernacula form, you want to keep them in a cold environment for at least 3 months. Putting them into like either the entire pot or uprooting the hibernacula, putting them into a moist plastic bag and sticking it in your fridge for 3 months. If you live in a temperate environment that is suitable for these guys, you could grow them in a bog outside in ground and just let them sit over winter, of course, and then come spring, they'll naturally start growing. If you're growing them inside like I do, you can just, after that obligate 3 months or so, you can bring them back out, set them under lights, and they'll often start growing again within a couple of days. And if you want to keep them most happy, they don't need necessarily a lot of food, but giving them freeze-dried bloodworms, a little bit of masse fertilizer, or some other suitable carnivorous plant fertilizer will work. You will find when that food sits on the leaves will actually dimple downward slightly, or the edges will curl in to form sort of a half stomach where the plant will secrete digestive enzymes to break down that food and take in the nutrients. Feed them just a little bit every now and again, and you'll see them maybe grow a little bit faster. You will see more flowers, as well as in the plants that can produce seeds, you'll see more seed pods. With this hybrid, generally, we find actually that it's sterile, so it cannot actually produce seeds normally. So in the wild, insects will visit these flowers and take the pollen to new ones and so on, but that pollen or the ovules that the pollen is trying to contact with are malformed in some way, and so they can't actually make contact, they can't produce a viable embryo. So these cannot cross back generally with their parent species, so you may find them all growing sympatrically. in cultivation, not having seeds is not too much of an issue either. Since they produce plenty of gemme, you feed those and they're easy to grow, easy to propagate. You can make a huge colony within a fairly short period, 1 to 2 years. But certainly once you get them happy and you get all those flowers going, it is quite a sight in spring or whenever the season happens to be that they decide to bloom for you and come out of dormancy. Beautiful purple flowers, and the rest of the year that rich green color from the rosettes. But that's about all that I have for this hybrid currently. I do have some other temperate species that are growing on right now. They are not flowering this season, but perhaps the next time they go through a dormant cycle and come out, I will be showcasing them. If I can manage to find the species that are the parents for this hybrid, I will be covering those as well. I used to have them, and grandiflora at least is somewhat common in the US and in European cultivation, so you may be lucky to pick up on one of those. But if you enjoy educational videos though like this, learning about the different species and hybrids and how to grow them, where they're found and so on, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything coming up. Leave comments and questions down below. And you can also learn more at my website, carltoncarnivores.com, where I have the database and blog for all the different plants and animals that I work with. I also post videos and photos and little tidbits on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Carlton Carnivores. If you'd like to help support in a more financial manner, you can visit the shop at carltoncarnivores.com. I oftentimes have all sorts of different plants and seeds and sometimes even baby reptiles if you're looking for a new pet available for sale there. And so you can support in that way, or join as a Patreon member at patreon.com/hcarlton, where you get access to the monthly seed contests that I do, offering things that you might not find in my shop, or things at a discounted rate in that case. If it's something expensive, you might get it for less. And also, you get early access to the videos and other give-backs as well. You can also donate at Coffee. All the links for these will be in the video description below, so check those out. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.